Aloha, what's up everybody, and welcome to Truth in Movies. Another episode. This one is Shutter Island. I think this is like our 95th, maybe, our 95th breakdown of movies, doing Truth in Movies. So I'm super excited for this one. I stayed up for a few days actually studying and breaking down this movie so that we can do this presentation today. Good to see you guys in the chat. Go ahead and feel free to blow up the chat with some popcorn and some good vibe emojis, and we're going to jump right into this movie. So I want to let you know from the beginning, I never give like spoiler alerts or anything, because I figure, you know, people understand I'm going to spoil the movie. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to let you know. I mean, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to make it better. So from the start, what I want to do is I just want to give you the twist at the end from the beginning. Okay, this movie's it's a huge mind bender, sweet flick. I love it. But I need to give you the twist at the end so that everything I'm about to go over makes sense. Okay, so if you don't want to know the twist or whatever, feel free to tune out or whatever. But everybody else, we either know or they're like, okay, tell me what it is, right? All right, cool. So here's the big twist at the end. The big twist is that this movie's about a guy who's going to arrive at some mysterious island. And he believes that he's a detective and that he's on the case and he's trying to solve, a crime or whatever. But it turns out that this guy right here is actually a patient at a mental hospital on that exact same island. So you need to know that so that we can talk about these different concepts, especially amnesia and our memories returning to us, etc. Okay? All right, cool. So let's jump right into the action and go to the very beginning. The very beginning is going to show you the Paramount logo. Classic logo, they show you the sky and all these stars start falling down from the sky. They zoom right in and they make a circle around this high and lofty mountain. Now, let's go back a sec. These stars that are falling from the sky represent the war that happened up in the heavens with the angels that were fallen, or the beings that fell down or floated down or arrived from above, however you'd like to say it. And they came down, and legends say that they landed on a place called Mount Hermon, or Mount Hermon, or Mount Meru, Mount Sinai, Mount Olympus, many, many different types of mountains that are the quintessential mountain of the world, the highest, tallest mountain in our world. We're going to make reference to that mountain many times throughout this presentation, but take a look at this one. Now, the company's name is called Paramount. Paramount's the name of the studio that brings you the movie. I have found that oftentimes their logos and introductions are a huge piece of the actual esoteric story that they're sharing with us. There's the surface level story. Sometimes there's a hidden story, but then there is the deep story that resonates with our forgotten past, or what I call our ancient oblivion. Now, if we check out the word Paramount, it says from mont, meaning upward. Also, mont is used as a word for mountain, but it means upward, right? Which is why mountains are named that, because they go up out of the earth. The word is equivalent to the Latin phrase per ad montem, which means literally to the hill. So this Paramount logo right here is Mount Meru, which is the highest mountain at the center of the world. It goes by many different names: Rupus Nigra, the lodestone, the lodestone of the world, many different things, Magnetic Mountain. We're going to come back to that too. But every single time that my son and I watch these movies and we see this, I have said this so many times that my son will say it before me, and he'll say, "Brought to you by Mount Meru," which I think is just super cute and true. But anyways, so brought to you by Mount Meru. Let's take a closer look at this logo and where it originated. Now, on the left over there, you're going to see the original Paramount logo, which was a crown, and it says Paramount Pictures, no mountain or anything. It's a crown. Now, this is really interesting. Think about what a crown is. It's a ring or a circle with points all the way around the edges of that circle. Okay, this is going to play into our presentation today. But it also says Paramount Pictures in excelsis. Well, that's super interesting. Keep that in mind. And let's take a look at this next one right here. Now, it's got a mountain sticking up out of the clouds, right? Now, this mountain of the world is said to be so high that it goes beyond the clouds up in the sky. And then, of course, it evolves over time, still has the clouds and the mountain poking up out of the clouds. It looked more triangular in these older pictures of this mountain. As you can see, it was more like more pointy and triangular looking, and then kind of rounded off, gave it some peaks and stuff. And then that brings us to today. But let's go back to this first one and let's translate that. Paramount Pictures in Excelsis. Now we're talking about the Paramount logo, and that particular mountain not representing any local mountain that, you know, someone was inspired by, so they drew a picture of some local mountain. No, I don't believe that. I believe this is the mountain. This is the quintessential mountain of the world. And if we take a look at this Latin that is no longer in their logo, we're going to get more context for that. It says in excelsis. So if we look up in excelsis in Latin and translate it to English, it translates to in high places. It's also directly related to the phrase Gloria in excelsis Deo, which when translated means glory to God in the highest. So if we go back and we take a look at this mountain and this logo together means this is the mountain that is the highest. It is the highest mountain that there is, the tallest mountain in the world, which the legends and the myths all corroborate that that's talking about Mount Meru, right? Mount Meru is where the fallen angels land on that mountain. It goes by many different names. And it's also the place where humans, some of us who feel called to return to this particular part of the world, we go back to this place and return to Hyperborea. We return to the Garden of Eden, this is actually like a shout out to my next book that I'm writing. It's Return to Hyperborea. But anyways, and this is also where we get Marvel. Like Marv is actually Maru. Okay, that V used to be a U, a letter U. So it's actually the gods of Meru is Marvel. So now hopefully it makes more sense why Stan Lee constantly says Excelsior or whatever for like no apparent reason. You know what I mean? Well, now hopefully it makes sense because there are those who seem to have insight into these things that I'm about to present to you today. And that takes us to the beginning of our movie, Shutter Island. Why is it called Shutter Island? Well, some of you, especially, you know, in hurricane-prone areas or cyclone-prone areas, you may have shutters on your windows. It means to shut. Basically, it's very simple. It means to close, as in a door, a window, or a gate. To lock, to fasten closed. So this island is an island that is closed off, or one that does close off from time to time, right? We're going to talk some more about the actual island itself. Now, let's check out the word origin for island. Island comes from Ig, which is very interesting, directly related to Yggdrasil, if you ask me. Ig, which can be pronounced in different ways, and it means island from the Proto-Germanic avjo or avjo, a thing on the water, from the Proto-Indo-European root aqua, which is where we get agua in Spanish, which means water, basically. And if you look down at the bottom, it says Old English ya, ea, water. Now, there is a god who is amongst the Anunnaki, or what are known as the beings who fell down from the heavens, which are those fallen angels that the Paramount logo makes reference to at the very beginning, right? That god, Enki, one of his other epithets is Yah, right? So you'll see that quite oftentimes, especially at the end of country names and various other things that were named after that main ancient deity. All right, cool. So our main characters arrive to this mysterious island on a boat by water. They're coming out of the fog. So I'm going to tell you now, this movie has so many different levels, okay? On some levels, this is just like, you know, you could interpret this personally, like, oh, well, for me, coming out of the fog means like, you know, I'm clearing my head and I'm starting to think better, etc. Which, yes, I totally agree with all that. But what I'm talking about is physically actually going to an actual, like, place, okay, a real place, that these represent actual places. This island is said to be hidden behind a veil of fog. I believe that's because of two things. One is because there's said to be a constant storm or a tempest because of the currents that wrap around the North Pole or surround the true North Pole. And because of the pressure differential between the inner recesses of our world and those on the surface, it creates constant fog, storm, mist, etc., which Mount Meru is also affectionately referred to as the Misty Mountain or the Shadow Mountain, etc., many different things. So this is also our character whose name is Andrew, and Andrew means humanity. So our character represents us, some of us maybe, right? Some of us will be able to relate to this more than others. But there is a character who represents humanity who is coming out of the fog, right? Because symbolically, we're going to watch him go through the apocalypse. Okay, this whole movie is symbolically showing us apocalyptic events. Now, when the apocalypse happens, right? Not a cataclysm. I also want to differentiate between the apocalypse, okay, and a cataclysm. Okay, cataclysms can come in very different sizes, and cataclysms often share attributes of the apocalypse. I'm talking about when the world depressurizes, our atmosphere depressurizes. When that happens and you have rapid depressurization, the atmosphere pulls apart so fast, it creates mist and fog the world over. Pardon me. All right, it talks about rapid depressurization, so you can understand the fog bit. It says normally associated with a bang and then a sudden fogging of the cabin air. This is if you were on an airplane. This is what you would see, instant fog all over the place. But before that, you would hear a loud bang, which we've talked about many times on my channel. Whenever that inner earth energy comes out, or the world itself opens up, or the sky opens up and depressurizes our atmosphere, we will hear a resounding, loud noise. Decompression illness. Now, we need to check out what happens whenever the world depressurizes. Many people will feel nauseous. They will feel sick to their stomachs because of the pressure differential between what is still in their ears and in their head versus the changing pressure outside. And right during the depressurization. So some symptoms include nausea, vomiting, headaches, fatigue, dizziness, etc. So we see our main character who represents humanity coming out of an apocalyptic event where the atmosphere has depressurized. He has his face in the toilet. He's puking his guts out. He's nauseous. He's throwing up. He also has a bump on his head, which might be a clue as to his amnesia, etc. But at this point in the movie, we are not supposed to know that, that he has amnesia or that he has a different personality or any of that stuff. But he says, pull yourself together, Teddy. Now, Teddy, let's check that out. Teddy is a short form nickname for three main names: Edward, Edmund, and Theodore. So this is his stage name. Okay, this is his superhero name. This is not his lawful name or anything, which is totally cool. Right? But he likes to call himself Teddy. His actual name is Andrew, but when he's playing the detective, he goes by Teddy. Okay, that's his alter ego, you could say. So let's see where Teddy comes from. From the name Edward, it means prosperity guard, somebody who guards prosperity. Theodore comes from gift of God. There are some of us who are gifts of God. We have a shining light within us. We have nothing but goodness and purity, and we're gifts to the world. Not to brag too much, but I mean, many of us are. Like, it's just in us to do good and to be kind, etc. And then Edmund means prosperity protector. So we have a prosperity guard and a prosperity protectors, which is what he represents as humanity. We collectively are the protectors of our own prosperity, which is what this movie is going to get into. Now he looks out of the window. He says, that's a lot of water. Looks at the ocean, right? Now, I don't really like the word ocean. I like to just call this the flood. This is the deluge. This is today that we have it still. Proof that the world flooded over, right? It's not always just had a whole bunch of water on it all over the place. That water comes and goes every other cycle. So he says, man, that's a lot of water. If you ask academics where all that water came from, they will say something similar to this, right? This is one of their theories. Water remained a gas until the earth cooled, etc. So when water is a gas, it is called water vapor, right? So this is interesting because whenever our atmosphere depressurizes, it creates water vapor in the form of fog and mist, like we just discussed, right? And it gives us what is affectionately known by many as the vapor canopy, right? Because once the depressurization effect is finished and done with, and it reaches its conclusion, then for an age we will live in the fog, right? The light will shine and pierce through the fog all over the place, and it will be a foggy world, at least for a time. Vapor pressure of water. Now, at pressures higher than vapor pressure, so if you have more pressure on Earth, right, water would condense, or that vapor would condense and turn into rain. So if you have a whole, If you have a a vapor canopy, right? If our entire atmosphere is vaporous, and then the pressure starts to increase and increase and increase, slowly that vapor is going to start condensating and turning into rain, which can add to the deluge itself. Now, I have a totally different theory as to where the majority of our ocean waters come from, but much of it can also come from all of that water vapor that will be in our atmosphere as the pressure starts to build back up in our world. All right, now we meet our two guys. We got Teddy over here, who's I'm just going to call Andrew, okay, because he represents humanity. And then we have his partner. They're from Boston. All right, so they're talking about the island that they're going to, and he says, all I know is it's a mental hospital, right? Now, let's time out real quick. The island. When you see the island in any movie, okay, many movies, I'll say, I don't want to be absolute, but many movies, when you see that it is centered on some mysterious island, some haunted island, some abnormal island where strange things happen, this is symbolic of the island at the North Pole, the island continent that goes by many names on its own, in and of itself, but it represents that place, that particular place. It can represent the whole world, which is totally fine, but oftentimes it represents the Garden of Eden, Hyperborea, Atlantis, the original landmass that's located or was located at the top of our world, at the head of our world. And he says, all I know is it's a mental hospital. Okay, so our world has become a mental hospital. This is all my opinion. Okay, I shouldn't have to repeat that, I guess, but I do, because I know there's new people that pop in and stuff. So I want to make sure to remind people, like, hey, I'm sharing my perspective and my walk and my experiences, right? I'm not saying this is all absolute fact. I'm just saying this is my perspective so far. All right, so he says it's a mental hospital for the criminally insane. I look around at the world at large and I see a mental hospital for the criminally insane. Now, the problem lies in the population. When the majority of the population becomes insanely criminally minded, right? Or bad, or immoral, or corrupt, or whatnot, right? Then they start to tend to look at the pure ones. They look at the good natured. They could look at the normal people, we would call them, and they would call them the crazy ones. They would call them the insane people. And this is a reference to our world being a prison planet. Now, that's all perspective. You can see it as a prison planet because we are trapped here until the doors open, or the gates or the windows of heaven or the earth. They open from time to time. There's a specific times when they open and we're free to go and leave and stuff. And other beings are free to come in here, just like we saw at the very beginning. But this is our world for a time. Now, just because we are confined to this place for a time, some people end up feeling overwhelmed. They're tired of it. They're stuck. They don't want to do this anymore. And I get that. I get that. Especially during the time that we live in now, when things are at their craziest, when things are at their worst. It's easy to give in to temptation and say, never mind. I want out. I changed my mind. I don't want to do this, right? I encourage you to hang in there because, one, you have to. I feel like I have to. So you might as well make the best of it. But two, it's not always going to be like this. One day those bars will open. One day the doors will open. One day the energy that surrounds our world, represented by this image right here, that energy will open up and you'll be able to leave either upwards or inwards to other places. This is our island. This is the mysterious island. Usually with these types of islands and the symbolism that they represent, you'll have things like amnesia, people forgetting who they are, where they came from, what they're doing there, the temptation for violence, the temptation for theft, and all these things that develop whenever people don't know who each other are. And you have to, learn who to trust, basically, which I tell my son, if you want to know who you can trust and you want to know what energy signature people have on the inside, look what they do on the outside. Right? Don't listen to just words. Words are meaningless. Actions back up words. Actions prove the sincerity of words spoken. So he says the dock. The dock is the only way on or off. Now, check this out. This is also in reference to the island at the North Pole. I'm going to show you some images of that, and the legends say that there is only one way onto that island, on or off, at least the easy way. There's always a hard way, okay? But the easy way, the main entrance to this area, it only has one area that you can go onto. I'll show you that in a bit. But let's look at the word dock. Dock comes from the Proto-Indo-European duke, which is like the Duke of Earl or something, you know, and it means to lead, or possibly from Scandinavian words, which mean low ground or hollow low ground, which is interesting too, right? The hollow entrances into our world. All right, so these two detectives, they're allegedly U.S. Marshals. They're looking at the island, and the captain says, I'd appreciate it if you'd hurry up about it. Storm's coming. Now, pay attention to this too in the movie. Anytime you see a storm coming, especially if it's a bad one, especially if it's just a terrible storm, it represents the world storm, the tempest, the world storm that comes whenever the world depressurizes, and it will create a swirling worldwide, a large grand scale version of what is said to happen around that island in the center of our world. And for more information on that, you can check out my Plasma Apocalypse playlist. I do have like a short video. I don't know if that's the one. Yeah, that's the one right there. If you click on this one right here, it's actually real short, and it gets just to all the highlights of what you can expect during the Plasma Apocalypse. All right, so he's got a badge, Deputy Marshal, U.S. Deputy Marshal. And right now he's representing, you know, somebody that's interested in truth and discovering the truth, and an investigator and a truth seeker, etc., right? And he also represents those of us who have in the past lost our memories, forgotten who we are, where we came from, what our purpose is, what we're doing here, right? So there's a time of reckoning. That time of reckoning is upon us. It's just around the corner. This is my sensation. Okay, this is how I feel about it. But there's a time when wisdom will be returned to those of us who seek it out, who have sought it out our entire lives, who desire it above anything else. That wisdom is contained and recorded in what many people call the Akashic records, the ether, or the energy of the earth itself. And there's many mentions about that particular record. Specifically, I'm thinking about a chapter in the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, which happens to be the chapter all about love. Now, we meet this warden. He says, I'm Deputy Warden McPherson, gentlemen. So let's check out McPherson, see what that means. Now, Mac means son of, or by extension, grandson of, right? So Pherson is directly related to the word persona, or person, son of a person, right? A person is not actually a human. Okay, a person is what you wear, or what anybody wears on the outside, as your get-up, as your outfit, as your uniform for the play of life, the stage of life that we are all in right now. It means mask, used by an actor for a role or a part or a character. It's a loan word from the Etruscan persu, which means mask. So he's somebody who has put on a mask. You're not looking at the person here. You're not looking at the spirit. You're not looking at the energy. You're looking at the mask that is on the outside. This guy right here is playing a role. He's playing a part. Now, if you've seen the movie, you know he's actually putting up a front. Everyone on the island is putting up a front except for Andrew. Or, you might actually say Andrew is too, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So they're on their way to the main facility, which is called Ashcliff, which is a shout out basically to Mount Meru being a volcanic mountain, right? Or a plasma volcanic mountain, I should say specifically. And he goes, electrified perimeter, right? Well, if we're going to Mount Meru, you could expect that there would be electricity wrapping around that entire island. In the Bible, it talked about the Garden of Eden being surrounded by a fiery sword that turns every which way. In Norse mythology, here we have Jormungand, or Jormungander, the Midgard, or middle garden, or the garden in the center, serpent, the serpent at the center, the serpent that wraps around so far that he ends up touching his own tail. That's the current. That's the electrical current around that central garden paradise that has a mountain at the middle, which shoots out a beam of plasma or energy that touches the sky and branches out, giving the appearance of the world tree, right? And around the outside of that, you can see, I don't believe that this is our entire world. I believe this is actually just the land at the middle. This is Midgard, the land at the middle. And you can see that mountain range, right? Remember we talked about that crown symbolism in the Paramount logo, right? It's a circle with all of these horns all the way around it, all of these spikes all the way around it, which is what we're going to see when we check out the origins of where they are right now. He says, you are hereby required to surrender your firearms. Now, why? If you're going to Mount Meru, if you're going to the Holy Land, the Promised Land, if you're going to that place that is said to be located at the middle of our world, why would you get rid of your firearms? They also said this in the Neverending Story. Remember? There was that black dude that had like the little dolphin head or whatever. I don't know what that was. And he says, no one can give you any advice but this. You must go alone and you must leave all your weapons behind, right? Well, why? Because typically weapons are made out of metal, right? Typically, they're not going to do you any good. Actually, they could end up harming you in the long run. Now, if you get close to Mount Meru, which is also known as Rupus Nigra, which means the black mountain because it is magnetic, just like a magnet is black, Rupus Nigra is said to be a magnetic mountain as well. Your weapons, any metal that you have would naturally be drawn and pulled in by this mountain right here, which is why there are so many stories of those men of old, those explorers who tried to find this place, and some were killed because their ships were sucked into this mountain, smashing into it just by the very metallic nails that were embedded within their ships. Now, speaking of this particular plot of land in the middle of the world with this particular mountain at the center of it, there have been references made to it across time. This says somewhere in the 14th century, a Franciscan from Oxford, a priest with an astrolabe, writes a travel log about his discoveries in the North Atlantic, and he calls it the Inventio Fortunata, the discovery of great fortune, right? Or a wonderful discovery. And in 1360, he presents it to the King of England. That book has since been lost. I'm going to strongly quote that, right? Lost since the late 15th century. I have a feeling it's probably not lost, just lost to the general public. Now, however, a man named Jacobus Sinoyen from the city of Hertgoenbosch in the present-day Netherlands summarizes the contents of the Inventio book that is lost and related to him in 1364 in Norway to another Franciscan who had met the author. And this guy's own travel book is called the Itinerarium, or the Itinerary. This book has also been lost, right? But we have all these little mentions and references to these books, so we know that they existed, or the odds are in favor of this book having existed. Hold on, let me just check to make sure we're good still. Okay, it looks like we are good still. All right, just checking. All right, cool. All right, and then it says, all this we know by the extensive quotes from the Itinerarium in the letter by the Flemish cartographer Gerard Mercator. Now, hold on. Gerard Mercator is actually the man who drew this image right here. He drew a corresponding map. We're gonna show you the whole map here in just a bit. But Mercator is the one who is the cartographer, famous cartographer, who drew that. And on this map, Gerard Mercator writes some notes about this area. He's an English scientist, occultist, and a royal advisor. And, he's writing to an English scientist, an occultist, and royal advisor, John Dee, right? John Dee was an advisor to royalty in that letter that was written in 1577, and now in the British Museum mentions that in the midst of the four countries is a whirlpool into which there empty these four indrawing seas which divide the north, and the water rushes around and around and descends into the earth just as if one were pouring it through a filter funnel. It's 4 degrees wide on every side of the pole, that is to say 8 degrees altogether, except right under the pole there lies a bare rock in the midst of the sea. Its circumference is about 33 French miles, and all of it is of magnetic stone. A giant magnetic mountain is said to be at the middle of the world. Now, here's another reference to that exact same mountain. And this is the exact same author who wrote the Itinerary, which is Sinoyen, if that's how you pronounce it. And he actually wrote about the adventures of King Arthur, who is said to have gone to this land beyond the far north, right? Or beyond Hyperborea, or to Hyperborea, I should say. Now, here's a quote. When those 4 ships had come back, they sent out all these ships to go exploring the Garden of Eden, to try to find it, to try to discover it, which I believe they've been doing since humanity had left that place. We've still been trying to find it. And I believe personally that there's strong evidence to suggest that the kings, queens, presidents, etc. of our entire world have been trying to rediscover this land for a very long time and trying to get back there for a very long time. So they sent this armada out to the North Pole, to beyond the Arctic Circle. And it says here about 4 ships. It says, when those 4 ships had come back, there were sailors who asserted that they knew there were magnetic rocks under the water, and that 8 ships had foundered because of their own iron nails. And then it goes on to talk about, what they did to remedy that problem, right? But they said that the nails were being sucked in and pulled toward the mountain so fast that the ships were crashing, smashing onto Rupus Nigra, just bursting into pieces, right? And of course, the sailors would be marooned or stuck, or they would just die or drown. Now, here's another one. An intrepid German traveler, the eponymous hero, which means he's the same, his name is the name of the book, basically. Okay. The eponymous hero of the Herzog Ernst, in his peregrinations, comes to a marvelous and perilous stretch of sea. I defer to Malcolm Letts, who contributed an article in the Notes and Queries dated on the 10th of August, 1946 on this subject. So there's this epic, this German epic called Herzog Ernst. Now, if we check it out, Herzog Ernst is a German epic from the early Middle Ages, 1180, first written down by an anonymous author from the Rhine region. Now, in that work, it says that the Duke, Herzog Ernst, and his companions, navigating in some unknown region, fall within the fatal attraction of the magnetic mountain. The ship sailed by a high mountain, the slopes of which appeared to be thick with the masts of ships. The ship's company rejoiced, thinking that they had reached a haven where they could rest. But one of the pilots climbed the mast, and after he recognized the magnetic mountain, he announced that they were in the fatal Liebermeer, and that their doom was sealed. Liebermeer. He said, we're in the Liebermeer. Well, what is Liebermeer? Let's check that out real quick. So if we look up Liebermeer, it says the presence of the magnetic mountain within this Liebermeer, or liver sea. Liber is liver. Sea, or a mir, or mer, means ocean or sea or large body of water. So the Liver Sea, that's what Liebermeer means, and that's a deadly place for some reason. Why would they call it the Liver Sea? That's strange, right? And it says, the presence of the magnetic mountain within this Liebermeer, or this Liver Sea, point rather more to the extreme north, once again, right? Now, this guy Letts, proceeds to give an etymology for the Liver Sea, the Liebermeer, in that the water was livered or thick so as to impede navigation. It was actually so thick that he called it the sea lung, because it would be moving like with the tides and stuff like that. And it was really thick and muddy and stuff. So if you look up the word liver, it actually goes back to the Proto-Indo-European root word leap, or lip, which means to stick or to adhere to. So let me finish this up real quick. It says something that was resembling a sea lung, a thing in which he says the earth, the sea, and all of the elements are held in suspension. And this is a sort of bond to hold all together, which you can neither walk nor sail upon. You cannot walk on it because it is liquid in nature and you'll sink into it like a blob, right? But you can't sail on it because it's so thick. You know what I mean? That it'll just keep the ship stuck in that particular area. Now, this part of the ocean is made reference to time and time again, and I believe that this is basically what we would call in electrolysis, right? If you have the anode and the cathode in like a brine solution, right? In order to create an electrical circuit. The anode will actually start dissolving at the bottom, and it will release bits and pieces of itself, which create what they call anode mud, right? So in that region, if you have a large scale anode and cathode mountain or mountain region, then you can expect in the anode area for it to be a muddy, boggy, unnavigable sea, or, the Liebermeer, basically. All right, so now he says, the Duke and his companions commended themselves to God, and instantly the ship, drawn by an unknown force, magnetism, crashed through the forest of rotten masts and foundered on a rock. The travelers climbed onto the other ships, which were thick with gold and silver and precious stones, but they could see no land. One by one, they died of starvation, the bodies being placed on the deck to be carried off by griffins to feed their young. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of this, but I'll summarize what happened to these guys. There was a small handful of them, like 4 or 5 of them, who decided to wrap themselves up in like I can't remember what it was, but basically something that the griffins thought looked tasty. So they wrapped themselves up in this stuff. The griffins would pick them up and they would fly them back to their nests or whatever on land. And this is how they ended up escaping and getting back to tell the story. Now, last but not least of this story, it says Madoc is able to navigate through this area by virtue of his use of antlers rather than iron in the construction of his ship. So one guy was able to get through because he heard if you use metal or metallic objects in the building of your ship's going to get sucked in and crash into this gigantic lodestone, aka Mount Meru. So instead, he uses antlers as nails. So he's able to get there. Now, back to this guy. He said, gentlemen, you will not get through this gate with your firearms, right? So they're like, you're not coming in here with any metal objects, basically, right? Now, he's taking them in and he's telling them, well, there was one mental patient who escaped. There was an escaped mental patient or prisoner or whatever, right? We're going to learn about the escaped prisoner in just a bit, but right now they're going to show you all the crazy people who are bound and chained and they're being forced to do manual labor. Okay, this is how I see the world when I just go out on a daily basis, except for like, it seems like the people don't realize they're wearing chains. It just seems like people don't know that they're in bonds and they're in handcuffs and they're very limited as to, their perceived freedoms and whatnot. Now, check this out. He says it's all due to Dr. Cawley. So there's this dude named Dr. Cawley who invented this whole Psycho Island idea and trying to treat the insane people or whatever. And then you can see his partner right there gives the first hint that he might not actually be his partner. He sticks his hand all the way in there like that, which is the gesture for what is known as the hidden hand, or those whose names you will not know because they're hidden. Okay. They're not politicians. They're not world leaders. They're not the super rich. They are the energy, the force that is behind the movers and shakers of our world, and they're called the hidden hand. Which, by the way, I have a whole series about the hidden hand too, which is really interesting. You should check it out sometime. Now, Scottish baby names meaning Cawley. Cawley, Dr. Cawley, the one that runs the island, his name means relic, right? So he has come to a place that is run by a relic, right? What is a relic? A relic is an object that is surviving from an earlier time, especially one that is historic or sentimental. So Mount Meru is the ultimate relic, basically. Now, if we take a look at his name, it says that they claim descent. That family lineage claims descent through the Hegemon line of Irish kings. This is super interesting. Hegemon, I'm going to come back to in just a second, okay? But take a look at this, right? Anglicanized as Hegemon, the son of so-and-so, so-and-so. It's a king of the Celtic Galatia. According to medieval Irish legends and historical traditions, was one of the chieftains who took part in the invasion of Ireland, who conquered the island from the Tuatha De Danann, and one of the first Malaysian high kings, right? So these people in the movie, at least, say that they're directly related, or they would be directly related to these people, those of Hegemon, who went to war with the Tuatha De Danann, which are ancient gods of, Ireland, Celtic ancient gods. It says here, the Tuatha De Danann were descended from Nemed, leader of a previous wave of inhabitants of Ireland. They came from 4 cities to the north of Ireland. Imagine that. 4 places northward of Ireland, the Tuatha De Danann. You could see them as basically being superheroes in the modern age, right? But you have this war between those of Hermon or Hermon, which is the name for that mountain I showed you in the beginning, right? In the apocryphal book of Enoch, Mount Hermon, or Hermon, is the place where the Watcher class of fallen angels descended to Earth. That is exactly where these stars seen at the beginning of the movie that fly in, they land right there on the Paramount logo, which is Mount Meru. That is the place where they land because it's directly underneath the window that they fall in from. They are known as the Watchers. And this is just a little clip from the book of Enoch, which goes into great detail about these beings. Now, Hermon, let's break that down a bit more, because the on at the end is a suffix. It just means of the. So Hermon are those of the Herm. What is Herm? A Herm is a square pillar of stone topped by a carved human head. Basically, it's a pillar and a circle on top, just like a lowercase letter I, right? This is what you would see. This is what many ancient people saw a long time ago when they looked up during the apocalypse and they saw a hole open up in the sky after the world was depressurizing and whatnot, and then a beam shoots up, right? Many beams actually all around the world shoot up from inner earth entrances, but the largest beam is seen the world across, and that one comes out of Mount Meru, creating the tree of life, or these types of symbols and images. Hermes, Mercury, etc. This is the symbol that goes along with them. The god is actually this. This is a cartoonification of that. This is a personification of that. That is the god object, okay? Not that. All right, cool. So moving on. They're still checking out the island. They see all these crazy people, and then this lady looks right at him with like freaking demon eyes. She's got these demon eyes, and she does the shush, right? That shh that we see all over the place. Many different movies and actors and celebrities and men of renown, even from the modern age. By the way, speaking of Charles Darwin, some people had asked him, what do you think about where the Garden of Eden is? Where do you think it's located? A lot of people used to be really interested in finding that out, especially 100 years ago. And Darwin said it's fruitless. There's no point in it. You might as well just not even try to find it. Don't talk about it, right? And we see this all over the place. Now, some people might just be doing it by repetition. They see someone else doing it. They have no idea why they're doing it, but it matters not. The point is, the symbol, the message that is being spoken reaches the people it is intended to reach across time. They are all doing it. All right, anyways, we'll come back to that. So, he thinks about it, right? I would also think about that, right? Which is good, because I believe that this is enough that we should definitely be considering what the meaning is, what's going on. I'm going to actually tell you what the meaning is here in just a bit. All right, so he goes inside. And in reference to Dr. Cawley, who created this whole mental prison construct, it says, Dr. Cawley's been consulted numerous times by Scotland Yard, the MI5, and the OSS. So he says, what do intelligence agencies want to consult a psychiatrist about? Interesting, right? Intelligence agency the world across have something to do with this relic known as Dr. Cawley on this island, which represents Mount Meru and the Garden of Eden. Why would they all want to know this? Well, here we have the symbol for the MI5. Let's just start with the top. Okay, on the top you can see obviously there is an eye at the very top where it should be the all-seeing eye, the depressurization point, the hole that blows open in the sky, which is backed by like a magenta red plasma, basically. So you get this evil eye, this red eye that opens up in the sky. You've got three triangles, boom, with the 60 degrees, 666, etc. Three triangles. All of it is representative of a black mountain or Mount Meru, Rupus nigra, basically. You've got the crown, right, which is the circle with the spikes all the way around it, which is a mountain range, basically. And so really all I got for now. Let's move on. Let's move forward. Boom. Oh, this one's actually MI6. So they have the MI5 and then they have the MI6, which is very similar. It's just that it's one stage up. And check it out. It says here, if you take a closer look, Semper occultus, right? I was in the Marine Corps, and our motto was Semper Fidelis, which means always faithful. So semper means always. And then occultus means hidden. Like always hidden. This is, and look at the bottom right there. Secret intelligence service. I went too far. So always hidden, secret, intelligent service. There are secrets. Check this out. I went to this museum. I'm going to just real quick. Okay. I went to this museum recently in Colorado Springs. I hear the lady that's giving the tour guide of the museum, and all of a sudden she started talking about like secret societies and people who had built this building that I was in and stuff. And then she goes, people say that they're like secret societies, but you can easily find their names and addresses right here in this book where they all wrote it down. And then people kind of laughed and stuff. And I was infuriated, because that's not accurate and that's misleading to try to tell people there are no secret societies just because you've heard of them. You know what I mean? They're not secret as in, oh, you don't know that we exist. That's not the secret, okay? The secret is not them hiding. They're not trying to hide. The secret is the information that they do not share with the rest of you, okay? Can you tell me that information? I was heated. I'm still heated about that, so let's move forward. Anyways, we get into Dr. Cawley's office. Let's check out some of this stuff, these decorations that he has on his little bookshelf here. You can see it looks like a little ancient ICP figure. That's actually not. All of these are fertility goddesses, okay? Most notably this one right here in the middle. You could tell it's a fertility goddess because usually she's grabbing her own up top, He's got childbearing hips and the whole nine. So these childbearing goddesses represent a type of Mother Mary, okay? The type of virgin goddess who gives birth to some sort of a savior figure or redeemer or God or deity, etc., right? So there's actually a goddess who is a fertility goddess whose name is Mari. You could also say Mary just as easily, right? There's something about Mari. Mari lives underground, normally in a cave in a high mountain. This is Sophia. This is that beam of energy from inside of the earth. Label it what you want, call it what you want, describe it what you want, but this is what it is. It is the energy that is now charging below your feet, that has retracted and gone back into the heart of the world to one day return and to flood the surface world where we live to bring about a golden age. So that is Mari. Now, it's interesting, too, because Mar is related to the word myrrh, like we talked about earlier, which means, or mir, which means sea or large body of water, right? Which is where Mary is. She's the woman of the sea, okay? Anyways, I don't want to get too deep into that. Mary is also directly related to Ishtar, which is where we get the word Easter and the holiday Easter. Inanna, who's the moon goddesses. Many of these are all moon goddesses as well because of the location of the actual moon being directly above Mount Meru. Goddess of war and sexual love. Ishtar is the Akkadian counterpart of the West Semitic goddess Astarte and, of course, Inanna. So he meets the doctor, Dr. Relic. They shake hands and they're busy talking, but while they're talking, I couldn't help but just notice the statue that's in the background. You know who this is? This character, this demigod or whatnot, his name is Pan, or you could say Pan, okay? But his name is Pan. So let's look up the word Pan. Pan means broad or a shallow vessel, okay? Basically something that is broad and shallow, meaning it's a little bit lower than the edges, just like a pan is, right? Now, from the Greek, patane, which is where we get patina from, means a plate or a dish, something that is flat but just curves up around the edges, like our crown symbolism that we talked about, right? Comes from pit, to spread, something that is spread out. The word has been used of any hollow thing that is shaped somewhat like a pan. Now, this is so important to what I'm about to show you. The sense of a head or the top of the head, it also conveys. So pan convinces a sense of being at the top, right? Exactly like this area of land that Mercator drew on his map that contains little personal notes to John Dee as we went over earlier, right? This is the pan of the world. This is the Holy Grail, which means crater, Okay, this part, all the way around the edge, you've got mountains, cliffs, jagged, huge, lofty mountains that just jut up out of the ocean, right? Which is why they say, you can't just go in there any place that you want to, right? There's only certain places where it's safe, where you can actually get there. Otherwise, you're going to take the hard way, okay, which I'll show you in just a minute too. But this is the pan. This is a valley right here in the middle, and it's flat, okay? All of these legends don't talk about how there's rolling hills or, mountainous areas and regions. No, this is all perfectly flat right here, and then the edges have these ridiculously steep mountains to them, right? So keep that image in mind. So this guy Andrew starts checking out the Dr. Cowley's office, and he sees this strange picture of this dude who's strapped to a chair. Take a look at the bottom of this chair too. It's got a little bucket underneath it, right? So, just in case you got to go. And this guy has a box strapped to his head. This reminded me of the chair when we just broke down recently this movie called Idiocracy. And Idiocracy has a chair very much like this with a little toilet at the bottom of it where the people don't really move or anything, so they just might as well go to the bathroom right where they are. This, to me, harkens to our modern world. This is a sign and an omen of where we are, right? How far we have fallen, that people just stay in one place. They sit there all day long and they have all of their luxuries and stuff all the way around them so that they don't have to move. Just like in WALL-E, right? All the people in the future are all fat and out of shape and probably diseased and stuff like that. And just like in Idiocracy, the people are mentally retarded. They're dumb because society has devolved over time. This also reminded me of the chairs that they sit in the Matrix, and they plug in, and they put they basically plug into like an alternate reality, a different place. They're here, but in their minds, they're actually acting out something else, like inside of a video game, just like people who wear virtual reality headsets, which I'm no stranger to that. I actually have one. I play with it sometimes. But this is what this reminds me of, is strapping these things onto us, right? So that we ignore the reality all around us. We ignore engaging in the world that we are put here to engage. Right? We're trying to sidestep. We're trying to dismiss. We're trying to find a little loophole so we don't have to engage in the world that we're supposed to be engaging with. And the movie tells us why we're supposed to be engaging with the world. So could this harken to us actually not being in this world? Possibly. All right, let's move forward. He says, one Rachel Solando. So now we get the name of the girl who went missing, the crazy girl who escaped off of the island. Now, if this island represents our world, right, then Rachel Solando represents a part of our world that we are all used to. She would be one of the inmates in this world, somebody who is always here. Not a human being, okay? We're too temporary. We're not here long enough to really for people to take note of us across thousands of years. But the sun is, and the moon is, and many other, features that we see across time. So one Rachel Solando escaped sometime in the last 24 hours. What does Rachel mean? It means a sheep, basically, right? We're just going to simplify it and keep it to a sheep. So Rachel means sheep. Solando is a word that is related to solar, or the sun, or the sheep of the sun, or the glorious sheep, or the sun sheep. Basically, you could say the sun, okay? A light source. Rachel Solando we're talking about a light source. We have different light sources in this world during different ages. Right now, we have two main ones. You could say three if you include the stars, right? The sun and the moon are light sources. The moon is not reflecting any garbage light off of anything. It makes its own light, okay? So I'm just telling you right now, it is a light. At least the one that you see moving around, that's a light, okay? It has an origin that does not move. It has a real substance to it, but we have the sun, we have the moon, and the stars, of course. Now, this whole sun goddess, right, which is what this is sort of in reference to, and it's not a physical male or feminine thing, but it harkens back to Japanese mythology and the goddess Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun. It says the sun goddess hid inside of the cave of heaven, right? Now, you'll see this trope. You'll recognize this all throughout ancient lore and myths and legends, where there was this goddess who became overwhelmed or upset for some reason, and she went inside of the earth, locked herself away in a cave, and then the second she does that, it's got serious and dire consequences on the rest of our world that we live in, meaning that there was famines, meaning that there was plagues and disease was introduced and entropy was introduced, and that's when the fall happens, etc. So people went to this cave to try to seek her out, to try to find her and have her escape that cave so that they could restore peace and tranquility to the world that they live in. That is the story of the goddess who is locked away in a cave, which is the same as Rachel Solando, which I'm going to show you in this movie. It says Rachel Solando drowned 3 of her children in a lake behind her house. All right, just real quick, I'm going to take you back to a picture because I want to just reference it, okay? This map that I showed you right here, some characters in this movie are parts of this map that have been personified. The lake that they refer to is this body of water right here, okay? So this body of water is the lake that they're constantly referring to. Usually it's called a black lake, a dark lake, a crystal lake, or a crystal clear lake, okay? Sometimes it's known as the Blue Lagoon, etc., right? And let's get back to our main picture. So Rachel Solando killed 3 of her children. Now, if Rachel Solando represents a light, then 3 of her children would also be 3 lights, triplets, 3 lights that light up our world, basically, right? So I'm just going to tell you my theory on what those 3 lights are. Those 3 lights that rise and die, they're born again every other cycle, okay, are the anode and cathode mountains, which we already made reference to, and Mount Meru's light in the middle. That's all 3. There was also a reference to that in the movie Encanto. Remember when we broke that down? And that girl, that grandma that held the candle, the magic candle or whatever, she talked about how she had these triplets, etc. This is the same exact story being told over and over. So they drowned in a lake. They had to drown in a lake because that's when the deluge came. That's when the floodwaters came. And when the floodwaters come, those pillars of the sky retract. Okay, if you have an ocean, you're not going to have the pillars. If you have an ocean, you're not going to have the sky beams or the rods of God or whatever different, ways that people want to describe that. So they had to drown. That's written in our history. He says she believes we're all delivery men, milkmen, and postal workers. So this lady doesn't believe that the people on Earth, basically, are actual regular people, that they're all kind of spies, right? Exactly like when we broke down the Truman Show in our Truth in Movies, right? All these movies are interrelated. You can see the story. And you know what? I'm really honored. I just want to say thank you. I've had some really awesome compliments lately in the comments section and stuff by so many people that say like, man, I like your breakdowns better than the movie, or man, dude, I don't watch movies the same way anymore because you've taught me, you've helped me to open my own eyes to check these things out and to find more value instead of entertainment only. You know what I mean? All right. So he says, now we don't know how she got out of her room. It was locked from the outside and the only window was barred. Interesting that they use that, right? The bar symbolism, when they talk about the bar, oftentimes it's the bar. It's the rod of God, okay? His rod and his staff, they comfort me, right? Psalm 23. Columns, pillars, all of these things are luminous forms of plasma that shoot out from the inside of the earth and they reach up to the heavens, right? And the window of our world is directly above Mount Meru. And that's actually the moon. Up there in the sky. But that window is barred, okay? Those beings cannot come in. Nobody can get out. When that bar is up, that means that we have gone through our electromagnetic shift and those barriers, also known as the magnetosphere, is back up and you can't get past it, okay? It's been barred. It's as if she evaporated straight through the walls, right? The sun, the solar deity. Now, the guard being questioned, he says, I came back around midnight and she was gone. Midnight is obviously, some of you know this, the stroke of midnight is the world clock. And they say we're 3 minutes to midnight, 2 minutes to midnight. And that's the countdown to the apocalypse, basically. Also, if anybody donates in the chat, I just want to say thank you. I don't have the notifications up right now because I had a problem with my my equipment. But a big shout out and thank you to everybody who does show the support. I'm definitely going to smile later on and and appreciate you and give you a little thank you to myself. So I appreciate all of you. Now, he opens up this letter, and the letter is from Rachel Solando, and it says the Law of Four. Who is 67? Now, I've got some theories and ideas, but I will tell you this is the only part of the movie that really threw me for a loop. And I felt like if I spent more time on it, I probably could really nail this, but I want to leave this one open. I want to ask you in the chat or in the comment section, what do you think this means? The Law of Four. You had to have seen the movie, basically, but if not, I'm gonna help you out there. And who is 67? I'm gonna share my ideas with you as we go, but I'm interested to hear what your theories are. Now, he meets this guy, and he says, "And who raised you, Marshall?" And he says, "Me, wolves," which is like funny, but it's also hearkening to the time of Remus and Romulus, and Remus, who were raised by wolves, right? This is the founders, the ancient founders, allegedly, of Rome. And they're said to have been raised by this wolf goddess or she-wolf. This harkens back to Hyperborea and being fed from the tree of life itself. Now, that tree of life comes out of Mount Meru, which is said to be a split mountain. So when you look at it, it's black, it's dark, and it looks like the head of a dog looking straight up and howling at the moon, which is right above it, right? And there's all of this manna and food that drops down from the heavens because of the plasma and how it interacts with the atmosphere and coalesces into nutrients and stuff like that. And people live off of that. All right. So this is his wife. Okay. So the main character, Andrew, I'm going to give you a little backstory. Okay. So this is his real wife in his imagination. He's actually imagining her right now. But in real life, his real wife killed his real children and drowned all three of them in that lake, just like we talked about. Right. And then he killed her. Like I understand. So he kills his actual wife. So these are all related, which means that it's actually humanity that is responsible for the death of the son and going from one age to another. So something to definitely think about. And I believe the movies have been telling this for a while. So his real wife shows up in his imagination and she says, "You're looking for Rachel Solando. She's still here." So the sun, or that energy that we call the sun, is still here, right? She never left. None of these things leave. They just retract. They just go into caves. They go inside of the earth and they charge until they're ready to come back out again and recharge the surface world where we live. So she goes to the window and you can see this is actually Rachel Solando. Okay. This is his wife, and he imagines that Rachel Solando looks different, but it's just a different name for his wife, okay? So literally, she's still here because she's standing right in front of him, right? But you can see her back is on fire. She starts to catch fire, and then all the way around this room that they're in, all this ash in the place called Ashcliff starts to fall down. All this ash all over the place because in the age that we live in now, our sun is getting hotter and hotter and brighter, and there will come a time when pretty soon, as it goes during the summertime, as it starts to go north towards the northern tropics, it will transgress. It will go beyond the northern tropics. And daylight will become so focused and so hot that it will start burning a trail, or a yellow brick road, you could say, all the way around as it spirals around to head home to the North Pole, where it was born, where it came from, basically. And that's where you'll see a false blue light or a false blue beam, which is sunlight, shooting straight down like a laser, right? Trying to get into the sacred mountain, or it appears to try to get into the sacred mountain, whatever. This is also known as the abomination of desolation, or the abomination that causes everything to become burnt and destroyed or desolate. So it's the time of ashes. So the sun dies. Basically, the sun has to die in order to bring us into another age, a new age, where we'll have a brand new light source, basically, too. Now, he's interviewing the relic. He's interviewing the doctor, Dr. Colley, and he says, is there a reason you keep referring to your patient in the past tense, doctor? And he's like, "Look outside, Marshall. Why do you think?" And if you look outside, you can see that it's like raining outside, right? So there's a storm on the way. And that storm is the world storm, like we talked about before. Now, this is how I imagine. I took a picture of this. This is when I took a break when I was doing my studies. I actually left it on the screen. And it made me laugh because I feel like this is the world. These are the actors, okay, who are in on it. Let's pretend like they know everything I'm telling you right now. Let's just pretend. Let's say they know. They're in on it. They get it, okay? They're trying to pass along a message to those of us who would receive it, but we're just not getting it. Movie after movie, song after song, book after book. It's just being given to us over and over, the truth hidden in plain sight, and we just refuse to see it. Just like this character refuses to recognize reality as those around him see it, right? So this is how I imagine many of these players in the game look at us. Okay. You know what I mean? Like this just cracks me up. Anyways, let's move forward. All right. So he's interviewing this other girl who is an inmate in this little psych ward or whatever. She grabs a piece of paper and she writes "run" on the paper. Okay. All of these inmates in this institution, which represent others, truth seekers, or you know, other people who have stepped into this particular time that we live in right now, they're all saying "run." They're all saying "get away." They're all saying you better not talk about this because they will lock you up. Okay, like you're not supposed to just. I mean, I feel like it's okay. Okay, I mean, like I feel like I have. I don't know how to describe it. Permission. I don't know how to say it, but I don't need permission, basically. So I don't even want to have that mindset. But basically, the end is so damn close that it doesn't really matter anymore. So open up the floodgates. You know what I mean? It's hard for them to track everybody, anyways. But the inmates are like, hey, don't talk about it. If you talk about Fight Club, like if you talk about these things, you're likely to get caught up. You're likely to have strange, seemingly random events happen that divert your focus, okay? That change your goals, that change your life, even just slightly, okay? They're here and they will just physically lock you up if you become too much of a burden. We all know this, right? They'll take care of business. Now, he says, Andrew Latest lit the match that caused the fire that killed my wife. Now, that's his alter ego, right? That's actually his real name, is Andrew Latest, right? I'm not going to get into latest too much. Basically, it means to strike somebody or something. I can't remember. But Andrew, that's all you need to know. He represents humanity, okay? So he has two sides to him. Humanity has two sides. We have two sides. The doctor has two sides. All the people on the island have like two sides to them. It doesn't imply to me, okay, maybe on one level it might, but it doesn't imply that everybody is just not to be trusted. They're all scandalous. They're all fake, you know, like bad. It just means that they have two sides. We have two energetic sides to the world that we live in, and those energies flip from time to time, okay? And it affects every single one of us when they flip. Some of us become anomalies during these times of electromagnetic flipping and reversals and whatnot. But it affects everybody, okay? Everybody is two-faced. Everybody has an alternative side. And when I believe, based on my research and studies and experience in life so far, that when that time comes and the world refills, the surface world refills with energy and wisdom is restored to us, it's like a fog is lifted. And it's like you become another person, like the best version of you that you have always wanted to and driven to be. You know what I mean? Anyways, he says it's turning into a fucking Kansas out here, boss. So he's talking about the storm and how bad it's getting, right? So they're making more mention. The storm is equally as much a character in this movie as any of the characters are. And you'll find that in many movies because that storm is about a storm, a world storm, a specific storm that happens, right? Which is when the world depressurizes. I also want to say this. I just want to say this because I don't want to cause confusion in my own little community of, you know, people, because people pay attention to what I say. Those beams that shoot up into the sky, you do not need to have depressurization of the atmosphere in order to have that happen. Okay, you can have the electromagnetics of the world flip and reverse, etc. At will. It can happen, you know, every so often or whatever. So you can have this sky phenomena that shows up from time to time, and you can have the inner earth depressurizing at different times. Of course, it'll all come up here, and that'll coalesce into a breaking point, which will be our atmospheric depressurization. That gets into when things start floating around and getting sucked out into space and eaten by Kronos and stuff. So I just want to make it clear, you don't have to have the one to have the other. You don't have to have depressurization of our atmosphere in order to have the blue beams retract or to come out. Okay, just want to make that very clear because I don't feel like I've made that clear before. So now I have. All right, so ash. Ash is all over this movie. There's ashes all over the place. I started doing some checking on Ash Cliff. It's called Ash Cliff. If you look it up, Proto-Indo-European root word, az. Ash comes from az, which means to burn or to glow. Okay, az, to burn or to glow. So a burning cliff, a glowing cliff, a volcano. Okay, it's basically what it is. Okay, not all volcanoes mean that they have to spew out lava and melted rock and stuff like that. That's just a byproduct because all that energy is inside the earth right now. When that energy comes out, guess where some of those exit points are going to be? Volcanoes. All right, so he says a lot of people know about this place, but nobody wants to talk. Well, that stands true of that Mercator map in the land at the North Pole. A lot of people know about that place, but nobody wants to talk about it. Why? Because there is a purpose and a reason for the world being in chaos and all of us going through the motions of life and being on the stage of life. Because I like to believe, and I'm more of the thought process, that this is not a prison to torture people, but it is a place of learning, higher learning, so that we can evolve and advance, or whatever the right word is, to become better. Right? To learn. And once you learn it, you don't need it anymore. Once you master that, you have to go to another school. You have to go to another place. You have to advance and continuously become better and better and better, right? And if you don't, you stay. So he says, and that's why it probably looks like a prison to so many, right? Those who are not advancing keep getting held back. They keep staying and they're getting more and more frustrated and they start feeling like a damn inmate and a prisoner and stuff. And there's probably some truth to that, right? Advance, like accomplish what you came here to accomplish. For me, it's all about goodness and love, but let's get back to the movie. He says, it's like they're scared or something. All these people know about it, but they don't talk about it. And it's like they're scared or something. So he's talking about this other guy. This guy starts seeing dragons everywhere because he starts looking into it. When he starts looking into it, he starts to see dragons everywhere. Dragons are a form of plasma, right? Originally, that plasma that came down from the sky was seen as a dragon or a sky worm or a fire dragon or a fire worm or whatever, right? And he ends up here at Ashcliff in Ward C. So some guy that knows about this lost land at the far reaches of, beyond the Arctic Circle, knows about it, starts seeing dragons everywhere he looks, just like I see the plasma apocalypse everywhere I look, including this movie right here. And he ends up where we're being called to go, which is to the North Pole. He ends up right here, but specifically in Ward C. Now check this out. If you take the letter C and you go back in time, and you reverse engineer the letter C, it actually is the letter G. It's Gimel. It's the third letter of many ancient alphabets. And it kind of looks like a little Nike swoosh right there. It's actually a foot, which implies a destination or a place worth walking to, right? And it's also the number 3. So they put him in Ward C, which is really Ward G, which is located at the exact center of the world. Boom, which is why they put a G right there, which is why the Masons venerate the G, etc., because that's the destination that they need to get back to. All right, so he says, 2 weeks on the main. I'm about to do an Australian accent. He says, let's see, ba, 2 weeks on the main. I can't do it. 2 weeks on the mainland. He walks into a bar, stabs 3 men to death. So there's the triplets dying again, okay, in a bar, nonetheless, right? The bar's death at the bars, basically. The sky beams retreating back into the earth. They're experimenting on people here. He's talking about Earth, okay? You're being experimented on. You're a subject of experiments. You're children in a class, okay? You could see yourselves as being, inmates or prisoners or children or whatever you would like to see yourself as. I see many of you as just children, including myself, okay? It's not an insult or anything. It's just that we're very young compared to our potential and what lies before us. He says, crazy people, they're the perfect subjects. They talk, nobody listens, which is why they call many of the truth seekers around the world crazy. And that's where it's headed too. If you start talking about stuff like this and it's not veiled in story form, which I highly recommend, okay, they'll just call you crazy. They'll say, oh, you're not with us? You must be a lunatic. You must be crazy. And people will literally, bad things happen. Okay, I've been through it. It's not fun. They'll take your kids away. They'll take everything away from you. They'll lock you up. It gets bad. So, shh, right? Let me do the talking. Like, I'm just kidding. You can talk all you want, but I'm just saying, be careful, be cautious, okay? Be careful and brave. Now he says, we're getting off this goddamn island. You and me, come on, right? In the middle of this storm, lightning's flashing all over the place. They're talking about leaving, getting off the island. Many of your Vietnam era songs are all about this concept of having to get out of here. Jimi Hendrix comes to mind, right? We gotta, how's it go? There must be some kind of way out of here, said the Joker to the thief, right? The Joker is Loki, which is that beam that shoots up out of the middle of the world. And the thief is Kronos, who takes everything. Okay, so these two cosmic deities are having this conversation. Anyways, I don't want to get too much into that one. He says, hurry up, this thing's turning into a goddamn hurricane. Now I'm going into Australian. I don't know why. I'm done with the accents. I'm done with it. All right, so we get to this board of directors, and they says, that's why I must repeat my insistence that all Ward C patients land at the North Pole be placed in manual restraints, that they be kept there, okay? Now, this is the voice of the outside world. Those of us who live on the outside from the Garden of Eden at the middle of the world, okay? They don't want all of those strangers, all of those weird people. Just, you may have caught my video right now. It's becoming pretty popular, but it's about Tartaria and the origins of the Tartarians, right? And I talked in that video about how the outsiders did not welcome the Tartarian race or that tribe of people from the North Pole into their areas, and they were strange to them. They didn't want them to come around and start procreating and messing up their way of life, okay? So this guy says that they be put in manual restraints. And Dr. Relic, we'll call him, says, if the facility floods, they'll drown. You know that. If this facility floods, they'll drown. If this world floods, which it will, and it does every other cycle, okay, guaranteed, it does this, they will drown. There will be a deluge, and that entire landmass will go underwater. Atlantis will sink beneath the waves, only to emerge once more. That's good news, just so you know, okay? Atlantis will reemerge. All of these things are going to reemerge. Every single thing that's been covered and hidden will come to light, and it will resurface, I promise. All right, I'm not sure why I picked this one up, except for just to show an example of the islands that were once there and the water around where the Arctic Circle is today versus what we have today, which is ocean, is what they call that. This is Arctic flood, or the flood in the arch portion of our world, okay? There's nothing there right now. At least it appears that there's nothing there right now. If, in fact, it is still there and it is underwater, I firmly believe, steadfastly, that water is going to recede and that it will resurface once more. We'll come back to that another time. All right, so he says that would take a lot of flooding. And he says we're on an island in the middle of the ocean during a hurricane. Now, check this out. This is the actual place in Boston, or Boston, where they are. They're not in the middle of the ocean. They're in the ocean, but they're definitely not in the middle. That land I showed you on that map is in the middle. It's in the direct middle of the Arctic Ocean, where the waters of our world come from anyway. He says it's a gamble, Stephen. Let's say that the power fails. If the power fails, the cell doors will open. Our power will fail in this world. Okay, whenever we go through, when we hit the crescendo, electromagnetically speaking, energetically speaking, of our world, and the poles flip for 3 days, you'll have a flipping of the poles, basically, maybe even more, maybe even like a week or something. But there'll be 3 days of darkness for sure. When that happens, the windows in the sky open up, and the Anunnaki can descend once more, and NASA and Elon. Elon can go up there and just jump in his little car that's probably floating around. I don't know if he's going to snag it, but people can leave during that time. That's when the doors open. That's when the windows open. That's when the portals open, even those inside of the earth. So you're going to see all kinds of inner earth beings and creatures flood out up to where we are, because they're ascending, just like the ancient Hopi went from the third world to the fourth world. They're also going to follow suit. There are people who are following in our footsteps right now, just as we will follow in those who came before us. Now he says 66 patients at this facility, huh? 66. Interesting. So who's the 67th? That's what that paper said, right? They say he's the 67th. This is very interesting. 66, right? 6 is Vav. It's the letter Vav, and it stands for like a tent peg or a hook, right? Something that connects the earth to the atmosphere or the sky, which is why, there's all that 666 symbolism of those hooks at the middle of our world. And the 2 hooks, when it's just 6 and 6 together, typically it's almost the same as saying 88, or the 2 boundary markers, the 2 hooks in the ground, the pillars of Hercules, right? Which I'm going to expound upon again, because I've heard so many different people, especially on YouTube, assuming that the pillars of Hercules are the Rock of Gibraltar. Yikes. All right. Well, I'm not a big debater or nothing like that, or arguer. But I want to put the information back out there once more, because I feel like it's not very compelling of a case, right? That's actually the pillars of Hercules over there by Spain and whatnot. Now, he says there's these flashes of light during the storm. He says it's just too goddamn bright, blah, blah, blah. You can see Pan in the background. All these lights are going off. He's like, oh my God. Pay attention when they say like Jesus Christ or oh my God, because typically they'll show you something symbolically that actually represents God, which is the light. One sec, sorry. So outside, the apocalypse is going off. There's going to be flashes of light like crazy whenever we experiences it. I mean, it's just going to be electricity all over the place. Loud noises, flashes of light all over the place. And one of the nurses says there's broken glass on the floor. We talked about the broken glass symbolism, and that representing the sky breaking, right? Which is a type of glass or ice. Speaking of ice, there's this part. He has this sort of flashback to this kind of concentration camp type deal where they have all these dead bodies that are just spilling out of these train cars. And they're all frozen solid. Okay, so the symbolism here is that during the apocalypse, when the apocalypse kicks off, it creates a vortex. It creates a storm, which whenever the world depressurizes, it pulls up atmosphere and gases and wind and stuff like that, just like a tornado does. It sucks things up, but it also has a downdraft just around that, which is the exact place that we call the Arctic Circle, the frozen tundra, the frozen wasteland, in a little ring around our world at the very top, because that is the place where super cold air was pulled down, exactly like in the movie Day After Tomorrow, from the downdraft of a world storm. So it goes right back down, just freezes everything it touches. So all these people are frozen. Now, he imagines that one of the frozen dead girls comes back to life. She looks up at him and she says, "You should have saved us all." Now, she's speaking to humanity. This little girl is not speaking to Andrew, the character in the movie. This little girl right here is talking to you and me, collectively, all of us. The movies are implying, to me at least, that we have a hand in what happens to this place. And it all depends on our energy, right? Remember when we saw A Knock at the Cabin and they had to sacrifice one of the 3, right? One was you had to sacrifice the leaders, right? Which was representative of one of those dads. His name meant leadership, right? Like the governments and stuff. Humanity or population, or the energy, like that male dominant energy that dominates our world right now. He meets this guy who this is his residual self-image, I guess you could say. Like if I use Matrix terminology, this is sort of how he sees his bad side. Some of us can relate to that. You might look inside and you don't see yourself as such a great person. You don't think that you're attractive, or, you might see yourself like this, when in reality, other people see you, like that. So this is how he sees himself. This got the scar on the face, and there's the one eye symbolism too. All right, so he's in there and he's talking to what he thinks is this guy, who all of a sudden changes into his partner, and his partner says, "The clock's ticking, my friend. We're running out of time. This is us." He's talking to humanity. When the character's name is Andrew, okay, or Ender, or Ander, or any such derivative, it means humanity. It means that they're not really talking to that character in the movie. They're speaking to you. It might as well just give you a first-person point of view with this guy looking right into the camera, right? We're running out of time. Time for what? Time to make a decision. The decision is to what? To save the world. So she's also talking to him about his alter ego, and she says, he isn't gone, he's still here. You need to kill him, and you need to kill him dead, right? So that's also a reference to our dark side, our bad side. His dark side, his bad side is akin to our own, okay? He's a murderer on the outside. He's gone through all kinds of stuff. He's haunted by these visions, which are pain and sadness and sorrow, which we're gonna see in a bit that, we need to let go of that stuff. He says the whole place is gone crazy. Now, the time will come, and many of you might even think it has already arrived, when the entire world will go crazy, okay? I already see it. I already call it out. I recognize it as part of my normal world in general, okay? There's exceptions, but those exceptions are dwindling. The world is going nuts, and I believe the time is going to come when the energy is so amplified that it will amplify it and harden the hearts of all who live here. So if you have skeletons in your closet, if you dwell on the negativity and the anger and the fear and stuff in this world, it'll be locked in. The time will come whenever that stuff's going to come to the surface, which means that everybody in the world will become psychotic and dangerous. So be careful. He said the backup generators failed. That means that they go through their electromagnetic neutral point, basically, when the electricity's down. So when that happens, that is when he says, it's a nice day for a stroll, don't you think? Towards sea, maybe, for example. So when the backup generator goes down, when the electricity of our world hits neutral point and it goes down, okay, when all the people and all the inmates are warring against one another and they're all plasma possessed and crazy and psychotic and have death and only death on their minds, that's the time when they are all distracted, so that we can sneak out towards sea to this place. Now, this is Ward C from above in the movie. This is the island at the North Pole, exactly how I showed you. Okay, it's not a circle or anything, but you can see it's separated into quadrants, 4, with one main building or pillar or bastion or tower or whatever poking up through the middle, connecting these 4, these are supposed to be the rivers, right? The Euphrates, the Pishon, the Gihon, and the Tigris, right? And this is not a real place. This is a prop that they made, right? If it was a real place, you would expect there to be titans and stuff walking around. Oh, there are titans walking around inside of it. Oh my God, I'm just kidding. So this is them making the prop, okay? So that building is not a real building. That's a prop. It's movie magic. It's Hollywood magic. And they specifically wanted it to look like that. Okay? They could have made it look like anything, but they specifically made it look just like that because of its what it represents, which is, the middle of our world. So anyways, they get inside of Ward C, which is really Ward G, right? And he talks to this guard and he says, we got most of the Bugsies locked down now, but some of them are still loose. Those effers will kill you. You hear? You're clear on that? So he's talking about Bugsies. Now, I know Bugsy is, we don't really use that too much anymore, but it used to mean crazy person, okay? And the reason they called them Bugsies, just like Bugs Bunny is a crazy bunny, right? The reason they called them that is because they believed that they had bugs in their minds, in their brains, actual, real bugs, microscopic bugs, okay, that are crawling around in there, tugging on the wrong crap and trying to influence the body itself, which, if you think about things in fractalverse terms, okay, which is as above, so below, as within, so without, okay, the world that we experience, if we have little bugs crawling around in our minds, or some of us, then we in turn are the bugs that are inside of the larger mind of God. Okay, and there's a war to eradicate and exterminate those bugs. I call them Fantazoids. Okay, I'm like actual physical creatures that are bugs, that are giant bugs that I've I make mention of quite often, okay? There are giant things in the world. Everything has a giant counterpart or a Titanic-sized counterpart. Bugs are no joke when they grow to large sizes, which will happen in the world to come. But the good news is many of your children and offspring will also grow to gigantic sizes, so you could hopefully just have them step on those Fantazoid bugs for you. Anyways, let's move forward. Mandy, hey, thanks for your donation, Mandy. All right, so we get to this place. They're going through Ward C, and it's kind of like gloomy and dark and murky, etc. But if you zoom in on the light source, whoosh, it's this image. This is the ancient glyph called the Tet, which I've talked about many different times here on my channel. Here's variants of the Tet. Okay, it's just a circle with an X inside of it. Sometimes it's tilted one way, sometimes tilted another way. It's all the same. It's the Tet, and the Tet is the middle of the world. This is the island at the middle of the world with the same circle, with the same 4 rivers that split it. And so he's talking to this inmate in Ward C, and he says, this is a game, and it's all for you. All of this is a game. Everybody here is acting, and they're all doing it for you so that you can improve. Think about that, right? Instead of seeing it one way and everybody's fake and it's all crap and nothing's real and you know what I mean? Like you could see it like that, or you could see it the opposite side, which is yes, it's all fake and it's all an act and stuff, but it's all being done for me, for my benefit. How can I benefit from this is the question I would ask. It's a game and all of it is for you. You're a fucking rat in a maze. A rat. Rat symbolism. Maze symbolism. Let's check it out. The word rat, a word of uncertain origin. They have no idea, basically. Nobody knows where rat comes from. They say it's just like cat. It's just a word that's been around forever. I don't accept that. Okay? Just because somebody else reaches a dead end does not mean that I have to. So I continue on. Now, after doing further research into the word rat, we see that it usually in old languages has a double T to it, right? Why would you do that? Why would you create a double T? It's not necessary. One T is enough, but they had a double T because they were trying to force a pronunciation onto a new language that didn't have the same letters that added up to make the same sound. So they would put a double T to try to emulate that original sound. Rata, ratata, rota, rota. It's like a really hard T sound, right? Rate, rat. And you can see in some of these, they actually put a Z after the second T. Now, this is super interesting because there used to be a glyph that was a T and a Z together. Sometimes it evolved into a D and a Z, but they had these two consonants together. One was a hard consonant and the other was more of a Z sound, sometimes an S sound, right? So you can see here in this example I've circled, ratsa, ratsa, ratsa. Ratza, ratza. And it depends on how you say it over time, or even if you're able to say it. Some cultures across time, they found it impossible to emulate the certain inflections that other cultures had. So they just had to make do, right? They had to respell it in their own way. Rutas, ratas, ratza, right? So you've got that T and that Z that are in there. And if you look up ratze, in ancient German, or one variant of German, it says a people, a clan, and a race. The rat race, which is why you have all this rat symbolism, why you have rats that oftentimes in the movies are acting like people, like human beings that are represented by human beings. The word rat, if we start with resh, which is the R sound, means a head. Okay, like the top of a human, a head, okay? Or the head of an animal or whatever. Rosh, resh. This is where the root of the word Russia comes from this, okay? But if we look at the T, it's not a T. It's a TZ sound, which is this letter or this glyph right here, which is Zadeh. Or some people, you know, they would say Zedok. It's not accurate to say Zedok because that K sound is actually the next letter in their alphabet. So they're sort of merging two letters when they say Zadok, which means righteousness, but it's also two letters in a row. Anyways, it's Zad. And if you look at this glyph, I just want to show you this real quick. I know we're kind of getting off subject, but it's important. This is the glyph. What this is a path and an endpoint, a path and a destination. So you can understand that the rats were called such because they had a head that led them to safety, or a head that led them to a destination, basically. All right, Middle English, rat, rot, etc., and so on and so forth, also means to scrape or to scratch or to gnaw, especially by the face, right, with their incisors or whatnot. Rats are social animals. Check this out. Rats are also known as commensal rodents. Now let's compare this to humanity and see if we can understand the rat symbolism and why they portray us as rats so often. Commensal rodents. What does commensal mean? If we look that up, it says a commensal is an organism that uses food supplied in the internal or external environment of the host without establishing a close association with the host. Okay? Hold on. Let me rephrase that simpler. Okay, so it's easy to understand. It uses food that is supplied by a host. That is us. We use the food that is supplied by the earth herself without establishing a close association with the host or with God or with nature, right? We're just here and we're just eating and stuff without any consideration as to where it comes from, right? So that's sort of some more symbolism there. The Nutcracker is a prime example of how rats or humanity is personified, right? Fighting against the Nutcrackers, etc. The Secret of Nim came to my mind when I was doing this research. The Maze Runner. These are humans, but they're rats in the maze, okay? All of us. The maze is our world. The maze keeps shifting. Every time we go through an apocalyptic event, the seasons change, the directions change, the magnetic poles change, the terrain changes, the sky changes, everything's changed, and we get confused, and we forget where home is. That's what this movie's about, finding home. He says, you can't dig out the truth and kill Ladis at the same time. Okay, so if he's speaking to humanity, that means we can't search for the truth and, participate in this world with our old, evil counterparts as well. You got to make a choice. You understand that, don't you? You got to make a choice. You want to uncover the truth? You got to let her go. We've got to let her go. And by her, I'm talking about this girl right there, which is his wife who is dead, right? This represents his sorrow, his sadness, his pain on the inside. You have to let that go to make it into this next world, or, at least that's what the movie's sort of conveying. Okay. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. I'm just saying it would behoove all of you to let go of all of that negativity in the form of pain, fear, anger, sadness, whatever it may be, because that's not the world that you want to live in, is it? Right? If you survive into the next world, inevitably you'll procreate, and you'll pass that sadness and that anger and that all of those bad qualities onto children who will pass it on to their children. And then it takes us back to where we are now. So get rid of it. Dolores, let's look at her name. Dolores literally means pain and sorrow. So get rid of your pain. Get rid of your sorrow. Let it go. This is called forgiveness, okay? Don't worry about forgiving everybody else and being a forgiving person and this and that. That'll come when you learn to let go of your own pain and your own sadness and your own sorrow, okay? Tomorrow's a brand new day. Start from scratch. Start over. You can do it anytime. It says, he says, I can't do it. I can't let go of my sorrow. I can't let go of Dolores. Then you'll never leave this island. You'll never leave, right? Because you'll just get re-looped back into the system. You need to learn to overcome. This is the trials and tribulations. So in order to leave, he needs to find this lighthouse. They show you this lighthouse. I also want to point out on the sides of this island, look at these cliffs. You see that? Straight up, right out of the ocean. That is Mary. That is something out of the ocean, out of the mar. This is like volcanic rock too. So there's the island, and there is the lighthouse. And he says, damn, we're too far south. We're going to have to double back. So right here, looking at the island, which represents Mount Meru, or the lighthouse, right? because it's a tower that has light coming out of it, which is what Mount Meru is. They're too far south. So where does that mean that the island is? Or where does that mean that lighthouse is? Obviously, they need to go north, right? They needed to go north to, for good results, for safety and all this other stuff. They needed to go north to leave the world, etc. So he says, there's no way we could cross those rocks. Well, there's no way you could cross these rocks either, okay? I mean, there is, but that's the hard way. This is the hard path, right? This entire place, they say, is surrounded by jagged cliffs. These mountain ranges are not just hills and, like the Rockies of Colorado. These are jutting structures that lift up out of the ocean water, okay? And they go all the way around. And some of these rivers are going so fast, you won't be able to take that place either, because these are the indrawn seas. Okay, this is where there's a current that you cannot navigate. It will take you wherever it's going, basically, right? It's also this is a clip from the Goonies. This is the doubloon that they found, and he says the lighthouse, the rock, and the restaurant all line up or whatever, right? But look at this, the image in the middle. That's the Tet I was telling you about. It actually goes all the way around, but there's a hole right there with the cross section in the middle. This is how you find it, right? Anode, cathode, Mount Meru, boom. And he says maybe a path that goes around the rocks, right? Well, there is. The legends talk about a path that does go around these rocks and a place where you can cross over, which is right here on the map. There's a river that is split into 7 different heads. And there is another rock mountain structure, a magnetic mountain, that is right over here, which I believe is the Cathode Island, or the Island of Life. Okay, this is where if you just invert where the Tartarians are said to have come from, which is this exact area right up here, and then they also went into this area, into Canada and stuff like that, North America. You just have to reverse that course, right? You go right back up here. And this river is split into 7 different heads. And the Bible makes mention of this. It says the 6th angel poured out his vial. This is a this is a prediction and a prophecy. A 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates. This one, not the one in the Middle East. That is a renamed river that is named after this one right here. The 6th angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. This river was dried up purposefully, or will be dried up purposefully, so that people can get into the promised land once again. There's an event that happens that does this. That event is made referenced in the Old Testament, where it says, with a scorching wind, he will sweep his hand over the Euphrates. He will split it into 7 streams, for men to cross with dry sandals. There will be a highway for the remnant of his people. Movie goes on to say, what the hell can I say to stop you? He doesn't want him going to the lighthouse, right? Remember, he's an actor. He's just an extra in the stage of life, okay? He's not really his partner or anything. So he wants to stop him from going to the lighthouse. Well, if you want to get there and you want to go the hard way, you're going to take the Cliffs of Insanity, okay? Or from the Lord of the Rings, here's the Cliffs of Insanity, okay? So that's what that's a reference to, is getting to the promised land by scaling a ridiculously high cliff, okay? That's way more difficult than walking across the Euphrates on dry ground. But Lord of the Rings also makes a reference to these Cliffs of Insanity that basically go straight up. Their legends say there are ways. They're just very dangerous, okay, with the winds and the height and everything. These ones right here from the Lord of the Rings, these are called the Stairs of Cirith Ungol, where a pair of stairs cut into the mountains of shadow on the borders of Mordor. The borders meaning the edges or the outside portion, just like I showed you, right? And also it refers to the mountain of shadow, which is Mount Meru, that's so large that it casts a shadow. Over the whole land or whatever, like a clock. All right. So you can see he goes to the edge of his own little mini version of what we just looked at, the little Cliffs of Insanity or whatever. And he sees all these rats pouring out of the side of that cliff. All these rats are coming out and they're being stranded as the waves are pounding into the sides right there. This represents humanity during the deluge, okay? Being trapped, being not allowed into the garden, not allowed access to a safe point in the world, and the waves are crashing in upon all of those rats. And he looks up and he sees a cave entrance. It's a cave that has a light. So he wants to go check out this cave that has a light inside of it. I wonder what this might symbolize. So he goes up the cliffs of insanity. He gets inside, and lo and behold, he finds Rachel Solando, at least what he thinks. He's actually imagining all of this, allegedly, in his mind. He finds Rachel Solando. Remember, we said she is the sun goddess, right? In Japanese lore, she's the sun goddess that locks herself away in a cave because she's upset about whatever, and then the whole world goes to crap. It's appropriate that they put her into this cave in this movie. That's why they're doing that. He says, "You're Rachel Solando, when the sun goddess hid in the cave of heaven, or Mary, who lives underground, normally in a cave in a high mountain. In Arcadia, she was known as Black Demeter. She was said to have taken a form of a mare to escape the pursuit of her younger brother Poseidon, and having been raped by him, despite her disguise, she dressed in all black, Mount Meru, and retreated into a cave, the cave of saviors, the cave of light, the cave of wonders, the cave of treasures. And she mourned to purify herself. When the light goes into the cave, when the light disappears from the world is cast into darkness, right? Sin enters the world, degradation of society, corruption, immoral actions become rampant all over the place. Oh, hold on. I just want to double check, make sure we're still live streaming. I hope so. Otherwise, I've just been talking to myself forever. That has happened before. All right, it looks like we're still good. Okay, good, sweet. I just want to double check. All right, let's continue on. And she says, "Have you ever heard of a transorbital lobotomy?" Well, that's interesting. A transorbital lobotomy is whenever they put something in through your eye, or they actually slide it like between your eye and your skull, and they shove it up into the brain, actually through right here. They just take a spike and they basically hammer it. And they mess up your brain. They turn you into a slave. They turn you into a mindless zombie. Exactly like what happened to those little creatures in the Dark Crystal too. But this is what a transorbital lobotomy is. This is directly related to the plasma apocalypse symbolism. She next says they zap the patient with electroshock and then they do this. So this is shown to you what happens to the plasma and the power that plasma has. That plasma that descends from above is so powerful that it can dock with your face, like the face huggers, dream crabs, face crabs, whatever different ways people, show them in fiction and fantasy or whatever. They go in through the eyes. That's why you're not supposed to look at these monsters and stuff like that, because you can get possessed. They can go right in through your eyes because they're light, and they can connect with your soul basically to amplify it and take charge and puppet you around. Just like that creature Starro, the bad guy Starro in the DC universe, right? Just a giant starfish basically. But he shoots out little tiny starfishes that look for people's faces, and little Starros attach to people and turn them into slaves, into thralls of the world eater. She says, then they go through the eye with an ice pick, and it makes the patients much more obedient. This is plasma possession, as I've talked about. This is an example from Beyond Skyline, right? When they look at the light, and that light just gets into their mind, and they can't control themselves. They just start moving about wherever this light tells them to go, basically. Sometimes it's a blue light, or seen as being blue. Sometimes it's a red light. I have found when usually it's a red light, that means you're plasma possessed, and that's the killers. That's the angry killer people. The blue light are usually people who are possessed by more of like the earth energy, the goodness energy or whatever, and they're the ones that are sort of called to go to Mount Meru or whatever. But the red light, that's plasma possessed, that's anger, that's all of that base vibrations and stuff that are being amplified within us. That's why Superman can only use his laser powers when he's pissed, usually, okay? She says they're creating ghosts to go out into the world and do things that sane men never would. Ghosts, spirits, people, right? That are out here in our world purposefully being created in order to mess the world up, to do insane and crazy things that we never ever would. She says, you haven't taken any pills, have you? She's talking to you because she's talking to Andrew. So she's talking to all of us. You haven't taken any pills, have you? I mean, even aspirin, right? Be careful. They have taken everything that we could possibly get our hands on and know that it's safe, and they just give it to us and say, oh, trust us, it's safe. Here, have some pills, have some aspirin, have some food, have some cigarettes, have some Kool-Aid, have some whatever, right? She says, you ate the food in the cafeteria? Did you drink the coffee that they gave you? Right? Now, interesting, because all these other movies that we've talked about the coffee reference, they're like, have some coffee, enjoy a nice fresh coffee. Oh, this coffee is delicious, right? But in this movie, they're saying, you didn't drink the coffee, did you? Right? Because you didn't grow that coffee, did you? Because they're putting chemicals in every single one of your products. She says, tell me at least you've been smoking your own cigarettes. No. Why? Because you've been buying Joker brand products, okay? Infused with various different chemicals that when put together have adverse and negative effects on the human mind, psyche, and body. All together. They're Joker brand products. And then that's the gag, folks. The chances are you bought them already. A little Batman reference in there. So he says, who knows about this on the island? I mean, who knows? Everyone. Who knows about Mount Meru? Who knows about all these secrets that we talk about on my channel? They're not really even secrets at all. Who knows about all this esoteric stuff that has been hidden from many of you? Everyone. Everyone. According to this movie. They all know. They're all in on it. They all know. But remember, it's being done for you. At least that's what the movie seems to indicate. Continue on. She says the only way off the island is the ferry, and they control it. There is a ferry that gets you off of this world, okay? To take the ferry out of this world. Ferry is another way of saying to pass over or cross over, like the word Iber or Hebrew, right? Or Nibiru, which is the place of the crossing, right? Which is right at the middle of our world. You'll see it open up and you'll see Nibiru one day. It's the place of the crossing, which is where the ferry of the world is. Not the ferry as in a boat, but the ferry as in the mystical, magical creature of light, right? That sprinkles dust wherever it goes, right? These little pixies and fairies and wisps and whatnot, right? There is a ferry that can get you off this world. And often it's blue, okay? Because it's oxygen. Ionized oxygen, the blue ferry. All right, so he gets picked up by this cop dude, this prison warden dude, and he says, God gave us violence to wage in his honor. Now, what they're showing you is a dichotomy between somebody who is a native, somebody who is full of red plasma, negativity. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm just being symbolic here. But basically, this is an evil person. Evil people think that they're good, okay? Every single one of them. There is really no good and evil. That's just polarity. But I will tell you, every single person who does bad, for the most part, does not believe they're doing bad. They just are inverted, okay? So their sense of bad is what you would call good and vice versa, right? So this guy's glorying in his evil. He's glorying to wage violence. He's all about violence and stuff. And they're talking to us. The movie's making a point. They're talking to Andrew. They're talking to us, okay? He's making a point that this is the temptation. This is one of the things we're here to do, is to overcome a strong energy that almost feels like it's just possessing us at times, or can possess us. So strong of an influence to overcome that, to become even stronger than what we are influenced by. Right? So he says, I thought God gave us moral order. And he says, no moral order as pure as this storm. Right? So the great leveler is the storm, the world storm. He says, he leans over and he says, if I were to sink my teeth into your eye right now, would you be able to stop me before I blinded you? Do you see, like, this is very casual, right? There are people out there that have that type of negativity inside. Beware. The times are coming when it will manifest the world across. And then he responds by like he's getting pretty agitated, right? Which the cop loves. And he goes, that's the spirit. And that is the spirit. That is the shape that they are trying to mold. They don't, now this gets into like Luciferian doctrine and stuff like that, which is much different than like Satanism and satanic stuff. But basically, there is the thought process that there are beings or energies that entered into this world that are supposed to be bad, so that we can know that bad exists. So that when we choose to do good, it's all the more good. It's not just good by default. It's not robotic in nature, but we truly have made the right choice instead of just being robotic by default. You know what I mean? Anyways, let's move forward. He says, now he's like, where's my partner? Where's my partner? And this guy's like, what partner? You came here alone. And then he's like, tell me about your partner again. And he goes, what partner? Right? And the crazy lady who told him to run earlier, remember how they're like, shut up, man. Don't talk about this stuff, especially not with these people who are in charge. Okay. They're not here to listen. They're not here to help you out. Okay. I don't care how close they look like they are to you. And then she starts laughing because the dude's like, what partner? You know, he starts playing along. Right. So he starts pretending like, oh, the world is trying to say that if I have a partner, I'm crazy. And so this guy's like, you don't have a partner. So why don't you tell me about this partner of yours? They're looking for reasons to call him crazy. So he's not going to give him one. He goes, what partner? I don't know what you're talking about. Right? That's the guys. That's the play, right? To see if you can be in this world, but not of this world, right? That's the secret that we keep to ourselves. The secret's known and it's manifest by our energy and by our actions. But if you want to keep up pretenses so you don't get thrown into the psych ward or prisons or, whatever happens like this lady, then you go along with it. You say, what Mount Meru? What's that? What are you talking about? Escape from the world? You know what I mean? Like you just kind of go along with things on the surface. And I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying that's what the movie seems to indicate is a good idea. So this guy's trying to find the exit. He goes and opens this door and this doctor stops him. You can see in the background, clearly it says there's an exit right back here. Okay. So he's trying to get to the exit. And this dude says, are you going somewhere? He's like, yeah. Just headed out to the ferry, points at the exit sign, and he goes, oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm afraid it's the other way. Be careful, right? Be very careful because they're also here to trick you and not let you leave. Okay. Especially if they can't leave, but many people are going to try to deter you from getting the heck out of this world if you're interested in doing that kind of thing. So be careful. Excuse me. That's why. So in our world, let's say that the exit represents the North Pole. This right here represents the North Pole. The doctor is saying, no, don't go to the North Pole. Go to the South Pole. So that's kind of what I'm getting at there. All right. So she says, you go there and you'll die. You go there and you'll die. So his persona or his mask or his pretense will die, right? Because he will come face to face with the truth. If you go there, we go there. A part of us dies and another part of us is born again. Another part of us is reborn because that wisdom is imparted to us. Just like in that movie, The Tall Grass, when they get to the middle of that grass maze or whatever. So here's the destination. Here's the place to go to. The lighthouse, the tower that's full of lights, the Rupus Nigra, the towering mountain, all that stuff that erupts, that inner earth energy that we've talked about time and time again. He finally heads to it. He gets down. You can see, I took a picture of the rock. This is all volcanic rock, basically. So they're showing you, volcanism. And you can see also that it's fenced off. So it's off limits is basically what they're trying to say. But there's not a lot of people guarding it in the movie. Okay. So if it was really that important, I feel like it would have more guards than that, but they don't. He gets inside. There's a spiral staircase, as you would expect to find in a lighthouse. However, in the movies, the spiral staircase represents the beam of light that shoots out of Mount Meru, out of Rupus Nigra, because it spins. It's a vortex of light that looks just like a solid column or whatever from far away, but if you get close to it, you'll see it's actually spinning. It's actually like a vortex or whatever. This is Jacob's ladder. This is the stairway to heaven, etc. All that type of symbolism. And he says he meets this guy in the top. Okay, they're actually not performing lobotomies or anything in here. Okay, at least the movie did not show that. And he says, you've actually been here for 2 years. You've been in this place for 2 years. This guy has serious amnesia. He's talking to us. We have forgotten. time and time again, the cycle of being born and reincarnating and going through all this drama and getting close to the truth, but then getting distracted and dying again and then having to pick back up and start all over, etc. We've been here many times. We've been through this many times. And we just get stubborn sometimes, and we refuse to accept what we feel inside and let our intuition guide us and listen to those, what I call spirit memories of the past. All right, so he says, you really think you're going to convince me that I'm crazy, huh? And he says, check this out. These are the names. Your rule of 4. Earlier it said was the rule of 4. Edward Daniels is Andrew Latus. Rachel Solando is Dolores Chanel. They're anagrams for one another. Edward Daniels is exactly the same 13 letters, which harken back to those 13 bloodlines, if you're familiar with those, which harken back to Mount Meru and those angels and the survivors. And the 67th patient at Ashcliff is you, Andrew. Us, all of us, humanity. We've forgotten about it, right? The anode and the cathode, responsible for making mankind, which is man and woman, male and female, positive and negative, out of the muddy land at the North Pole region, right? Or, imbuing it with spirit energy, as you could say. You are the 67th patient. Now his partner comes in. He finds his partner, but he finds out it's not really his partner. He says, I've actually been your primary psychiatrist for the last 2 years. So think about this, like all these people, doctors, lawyers, psychiatrists, judges, people who say that they have your best interest, that, tell me all your secrets. Go ahead. You can open up to me. No problem, blah, blah, blah. At the beginning, if you sit down with the therapist, the psychiatrist, whatever, they will tell you, usually they're obligated to tell you, listen, you can tell me anything. Nothing goes out of this room. Like, I'm totally keeping your secrets unless, and then they give you a long list of things that can be interpreted in any way they want to, unless you're a danger to yourself or other people. Boom. Well, who is that up to? It's up to them, the listeners, the ones that you're telling them all your secrets and stuff like that. And I'm just saying, this is my perspective. Okay. I'm actually talking to myself. So if you got therapists and stuff like that, fine. Some people enjoy that and that's totally fine. It's not me. It's not my thing. But I'm telling you, it's unwise to just open up and tell all kinds of deep secrets, especially if you talk about this kind of stuff. You might end up in a straitjacket. I'm just being honest with you, okay? Because these people are not your partners. They're not your friends or anything. They're paid government employees that are snitches, that will snitch on you and will tell on you and put you behind bars and lock you up and put the straitjacket on you and take your kids away from you and all kinds of messed up stuff because you didn't listen. You know what I mean? He says, I thought that I could construct the most radical cutting-edge role play ever attempted in psychiatry and that it would bring you back. Now, see, all of this, being this island of crazy people and our island of a crazy world, the movie indicates that it is designed to better us. It is designed, all these breadcrumbs, all the movies, all of the music, all the stuff that I mentioned earlier, seem to be designed to people who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear so that we can figure out what our purpose is once more because we have amnesia. We've forgotten. We've forgotten who we are, where we came from, and where we should go, right? So, thankfully, we are in a time now where the reminders are steadily coming. And he says, you moved to that lake house. Remember the lake house, the lake I told you about, right? You moved to that lake house after she purposefully set fire to your city apartment. She, being the sun, purposefully set fire, right, as it got hotter and hotter and spiraled inward towards the North Pole. And she says, I told you this would be the end of you. And then he has this flashback to when his children were drowned in the waters. And he starts to remember reality because he's in the lighthouse now, the place of wisdom or whatnot. And he remembers the flood. I mean, that's in the movie, it's not a flood. It's just a lake or whatever, right? But it's those 3 children which represent anode, cathode, and Mount Meru, respectively, those 3 lights at the top of the world that create an electrical arc, which is like a new sunlight in our world. But anyways, those retract. They go down under the waters. They're covered up by the waters in the deluge, and they're seen as drowning. So he's starting to remember this, which means this is us starting to remember where our oceans came from, what happened during these different cataclysms that have befallen us. Various things that we're starting to recall because we can look at history with another perspective now, thankfully. So he feels remorse. He feels bad about it. He's got blood on his hands. This is the part where he needs to let go. He needs to forgive himself and realize that his past is not his present. Who we were, what we have done in our past does not define who we are in the present moment. So make the most of your present moment. Dolores, she told me that she had an insect living inside of her brain. She could feel it clicking across her skull. This is also reminiscent of the Fantazoids that I talk about. At least there's various classes of Fantazoid. Not all of them are insects. Okay, I just want to be very clear on that. But giant insects, bugs within the greater mind of God, etc. Insects in the form of all kinds of messed up stuff that many humans have in our brains, microscopically. When we fight these things, we're not even aware that they're there. I'm sure many people have seen like all kinds of weird articles about microscopic bugs that are living on your face or, stuff like that. If that happens and it's on your face, it's also happening in the mind. It's also happening in the brain, right? Just pulling the wires around just for fun. Chaos instead of order, right? Trying to destroy things, trying to tear things apart. Look at the world we live in right now. Look at the state of the world. Look at the state of humanity. Bugs, creatures, creepy crawlies, just tearing things apart, right? Instead of putting things together. He says, we broke through once before, 9 months ago, and then you regressed. So now he remembers who he is, okay? So he's admitting it now. And he's like, okay, good job, but I'm kind of worried because last time I told you about this, you totally forgot. He's like, yeah, well, I totally forgot this time. I don't even remember that, right? This is us. This is humanity. We discovered the things that we've talked about, these various secrets, and there's way more than just this, right? But we discover these secret things, and then we go through a cataclysm, and we develop amnesia over time, again and again and again. And we have to leave ourselves clues, just like the clues that are left to us in this movie that is talking about a great reset of humanity. You reset humans, humanity, Andrew, right? Humans of the world, like a tape playing over and over on an endless loop. This keeps happening to us. We are in the modern age, but we've been in the modern age before, many different times. And there will be another modern age after this one collapses and becomes dust once again. The question is, can we find a way out of the loop? So he goes outside the next day. They think he's all better. He sits down with his therapist/partner, and he's like, how you doing today? He's like, I'm good. We got to get off this rock, Chuck. We got to get off this rock. So he goes back into that whole detective mentality, and he's like, oh man, great. Like we're going to have to lobotomize this guy. It didn't work or whatever. And he goes, wait a minute, which would be worse? To live as a monster or to die as a good man? The people of this world, in the modern world, from my perspective and my walk and my path and my experience so far in general, are becoming monsters. Okay? So what's better? To live in this world as a monster or to die as a good man? And to die means that you attempted to survive, basically, right? So it's talking about, what do you want to do? Do you want to continue with the pretense? Do you want to live in this world of pretend, the pretend land? You know what I mean? Where everything's fake and stuff and it's all being done to help you out? Or do you want to rise above it and be a good person? And you want to live here forever, cyclically reincarnating over and over and over, never figuring it out, never putting the clues together? Or do you want to put them together and move on? Right? Which makes his partner think twice, just for a second, and makes the viewer, me, think twice, if he actually regressed or if he purposefully acted like he forgot, right? So that they would take him away and lobotomize him. so that he could just end it basically once and for all. So they take him to the lighthouse. They take him back to the lighthouse. That's how he gets to the lighthouse, is he figures out he has to play along, right? He's got to keep up pretenses. He's got to be quiet and stop telling the truth to all these people. He has to go along with it and go with the flow so that he can one day, at the right moment, make his move. Just like many of us. And that's Shutter Island. That's our movie for today. I hope you guys had a good time, enjoyed it. Leave lots of comments for me to check out. And until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
Cool.